Welcome or welcome back to Detailed, an original podcast by RCAT. This is the show where we uncover lessons learned to help you navigate your next project. I'm Cherise Lakeside, Senior Spec Writer at RDH Building Science, and your host. My guests today are Gina Chang, AIA EDAC, and Fabian Kremkus, AIA Lead GA, both principals at Co-Architects in Los Angeles, California. Gina is a healthcare design leader with more than 15 years of experience with a healthy understanding of the complex and unique nature of healthcare projects. No pun intended. Gina joined Co-Architects in 2007 as a medical planner and project coordinator for the Palomar Medical Center project, which incidentally we interviewed her about last year on Detailed. Recently, she has had leadership roles on projects for Kaiser Permanente, City of Hope, UC Irvine, and others. Fabian has worked nationally and internationally on a variety of projects in his 25-plus year career. These include academic and research facilities, secondary schools, hospitals, corporate headquarters, and my personal favorite, sports and entertainment complexes. Since joining Co-Architects in 1999, Fabian has served as the designer for major projects in Southern California and throughout the country. His enthusiastic devotion to the profession of architecture and craft of building is pretty infectious, and his approach to each project merges design sensitivity with a great attention to detail, which is why they're here. The project we are talking about today is UCI Health at the Irvine Medical Center in Irvine, California. The new campus includes a 144-bed, 350,000 square foot hospital, comprising an emergency department, inpatient bed services, operating rooms, pre- and post-observation beds, inpatient imaging, and support services. A 220,000 square foot ambulatory surgery center will offer outpatient surgery and procedure rooms, diagnostic and imaging services, oncology treatment and infusion facilities, clinical exam rooms, a pharmacy, and also more support services. Now, let's get into the details. Gina and Fabian, welcome to Detailed. Actually, welcome back for Gina. How are you guys today?
Good.
Great. How are you?
Good.
Yeah.
Good. It's Friday, so we're all in a good mood. Ready for the weekend?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
That sounds very decisive.
Yes.
You mentioned that you just came back from a conference. What conference did you go to?
I went to Charlotte for the Healthcare Facilities Symposium. We actually presented UCI.
And we do have some questions about that later. So I like to start with an icebreaker, warm you up a little bit, especially since Fabian is new to our little party here. So my icebreaker today is, tell me one interesting thing about your family history.
About my family history. So I come from a lineage of craftsmen, basically. So my grandpa was a mason, my dad was a mason, and then became an architect. I was a carpenter, so it's kind of like that. And my brother also follows in that tradition. So I'm very familiar. I grew up with it as a little boy, with a hammer in my hands on the construction side. I have a funny story about that, but I think that's
it's not appropriate.
It's not appropriate. No.
You can tell me offline. I have to ask, since you clearly have an accent, where are you from?
From Germany. I'm born and raised in Germany, in Hamburg, in a little town outside of Hamburg.
You Germans are a little sassy.
You really?
Yes. I have a neighbor here. I live in a townhome community, and he's from Germany. And him and I and another friend of ours in the neighborhood go to all the Timbers games together in Portland. And he's sassy. And he makes fun of everything I try to pronounce in German. So I'm now really looking forward to this interview.
Good.
How about you, Gina?
Interesting family history?
Yeah.
Well, I'm a second generation Korean American. My parents are both born in Korea. And I guess when they came here, my mom had visited New York City with a school trip and decided that she didn't want to go back to Korea, which meant that my dad had to follow her out here, which is kind of unusual for the culture of that country. Mm-hmm. And it kind of maybe is why I'm as bossy as I am, or
independent thinker.
Yeah, I don't like the term bossy.
No. It also doesn't characterize it.
Oh, well,
right. No, you're not bossy. I don't think so.
I'm actually a first generation American.
No.
My mom was born in Finland. And they came over when she was a young girl through Ellis Island. And my last name is not actually Lakeside. My last name is actually Laukkanen, but when they came through in Ellis Island, they told the immigrants, pick a name that Americans can spell and say and understand. And my grandfather saw the word Lakeside on the side of some warehouse building coming through Ellis Island and said, okay, that's our last name. So I don't even have a real last name. I've thought about over the years changing it back, but who knows? We'll see.
Lakeside has a very peaceful connotation. So,
well, and being unique is okay. You can be bossy and unique.
Yes, no,
because I've got the bossy name tag lots of times. So let's talk some more. We read your official bio in the intro. So briefly, tell me one thing. Each of you, tell me one thing that you are particularly passionate about in our industry in architecture.
You want me to start?
Sure.
So, I'm very passionate about a human-centric design process. So where we integrate people into the design process that are typically not part of it, right? So having a design charrette with the staff and inviting the engineers or the client to the table, getting really people around the table and coming up with ideas and solutions and visions about a project early on, and hearing all those people has really been a wonderful, enriching thing for the practice and also for ourselves, I think. Gina has been part of that process many times, and it's been great to do that. And I recommend it to anyone to try.
Mine also has to do with people. I have very much enjoyed this process that Fabian has talked about. And the people that I work with on a day-to-day basis are usually really stressed out. They are either stressed out and passionate about carrying out a mission, which is, improving health and taking care of people, or they are the mission. They are the patients and the family who are sick or sometimes fighting for their lives. And we used to think, how much can our work really affect their outcomes, their health? And there's been a lot of, more and more evidence that nature, biophilia, these different kind of human-centered qualities make a huge difference in people's outcomes. And the fact that we have that power and that responsibility to actually help people be more well and more healthy is something that is really exciting to me.
In the first interview that you came and did on the Palomar Medical Center, and I'm going to mess up a later question by saying this, but I've had 3 episodes, I think, of this podcast. I think we're up to like 66 or 67 that we've released so far that got me choked up or made me cry. And that was, you guys were one of them. And it was that mission. And so I was sold on your firm from that day going forward, that you go to that level. But we'll talk about that also later. Let's talk about UCI Health, Irvine Medical Center. Make sure I say the whole project name. Can you start by giving me, there's so much going on here. I was like, I need 3 days to talk to them. Can you start by giving me a broad overview of all the pieces and parts of this building? There's a lot of different types of spaces going on here.
Sure. So it's a replacement healthcare campus. So UCI Medical Center has another campus already in the city of Orange. This one is much closer to the academic campus. And the site is really unique. It's on one side, it's on Jamboree, which is the busiest street in Irvine. And on the other side, it's a natural preserve called the San Joaquin Marsh. And it's sort of it's a crowded little site, but it's kind of perfectly situated. And on that site, there's a hospital, there's a cancer and ambulatory care center, a parking structure, a central utility plant. There's a variety of outdoor spaces. There's also a parking structure and a medical office building that's being done by a separate architect. So all those things are on that site. As far as healthcare spaces go, there's about 500,000 square feet of healthcare spaces, including, 144 patient rooms. So that's the hospital side. There's a bunch of infusion and exam rooms and full radiology in the cancer center side. And beneath it all, there's a big platform that connects the two buildings of 21 ORs. So it's a big surgical suite, and it kind of flexibly serves both the inpatient side and the outpatient side. It's kind of in a nutshell in terms of space. If you get anything.
A huge imaging component also, like there's a MRI. It has a full-blown emergency department,
right?
But it's not a trauma center. So doesn't have a heliport on top of the hospital. 1,300 parking spots, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is a huge project. I need to hear all about this, how this came to be, why the client chose to be such a trailblazer here. I mean, this is a big deal. So tell me, I don't even know how to wrap my head around it because I've never seen one before. So tell me about this all-electric hospital.
Maybe I'll start with the UC policy and you can, So UC Irvine is part of the UC system. And there is a big pledge that they made to be carbon neutral by 2025. It's a nearly impossible task. And healthcare facilities are exempt from a lot of these requirements. You have to put a lot of effort into making the waivers and proving why you can't do it. And for UCI Health, they decided instead to put the effort into trying to accomplish it. So that was sort of the impetus there. And our client, Brian Pratt, he was there all along pushing the charge. Not wanting to. I think
we had the full support of also the clinical group and the CEO. I mean, everybody lined up behind this target, and that was really that's unusual, but that's why it happened. Mm-hmm. I think that's the reason why it happened. The real push on this was also so remarkable because it was on a very tight schedule. So the design efforts that we had to complete in order to do that were compressed in time. So that typically works against going with an innovative solution like this. Mm-hmm. And because you're going to have to adjust the design, and a lot of the players don't know what they're going to, new equipment, new this, new that. So people are generally want to go with the known status quo thing. And it was remarkable. The engineering team, the contractor, everyone kind of fell in line to pursue this. And that's why it happened.
And we'll talk about, I know Fabian will talk about the facade and things like that later, but everything had to go towards it because we had to really bring down all of the usage as much as possible in order to make the finances work. it did cost more money, but a lot less than we had actually initially anticipated.
Yeah, and there was a very large payback portion of that also because we were able to do heat recovery from the steam generation, and that brought down the operational cost tremendously. Also, there is, when you have gas boilers in the plant, you have to have 24/7 dedicated personnel to oversee those. And with a heat recovery system like this and air-cooled chillers and heat exchangers, you don't have to have that anymore because it's not as dangerous as a boiler. And so that was also kind of like you're saving a little manpower, which is a good thing anyway.
One last funny thing I'll mention, Cherise, about the all-electric. We wanted to get rid of all the natural gas usage, because it's a fossil fuel, and we wanted to not burn fossil fuels to get to the carbon goal. The last standout was the kitchen, because people hate cooking with electricity. It just doesn't taste as good. And so we actually just a couple months ago found out that they finally relinquished, and it will be an electric kitchen. We will be fully all electric, including the kitchen.
That's amazing.
Because we used to say, we're all electric.
I didn't know about this. She just told me today. Yeah, that's so wonderful. Yeah. That's really great news.
So I love that. All electric, except the kitchen, but now it's the kitchen too. Just out of curiosity, this is not on my list, but you know me, I go down rabbit holes. So what are the biggest key differences in an all-electric hospital as opposed to your standard run-of-the-mill hospital? Is it mainly just not heating with a fossil fuel, or are there other key things? I've worked on a couple, it's been a long time, but a couple really ginormous medical type of projects. And there's all kinds of gases that have to run through the building and all these different things. What are the biggest key things that you have to change if you're doing an all-electric hospital?
Jamigo?
Mm-hmm. So the getting rid of the boilers, big one, for heating and cooling, but also for steam, because there's a lot of steam in a hospital. You need steam to sterilize. So that needed to go electric. There's these
air-cooled chillers.
The heat pumps?
Yeah.
Air source heat pumps?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are very noisy, is what we found. And so the acoustics around that was a big design effort. They even said, don't
need more room on the roof.
And you need more room. Yes.
So you need more room to place all that. There's more outdoor equipment, significantly more outdoor equipment.
And they said that actually, the electric companies are struggling to keep up with the pace of things being all electric. So it took several years for Southern California Edison to be able to supply what we needed for this project. And they already told UCI, if you build a second wing, it's going to take 6 to 8 years for us to be ready for you on the grid. So, but luckily for this project, it happened in time.
Yeah.
So then they must have been talking to them for quite some time ahead of making this decision to actually build it, so that the system could handle that extra load.
Yeah, I mean the electrical grid is in many regards a bottleneck, right? Like also how we get sustainable power to the energy network in California. It's the grid that really, it's not necessarily the generation of the sustainable energy, but it's the grid itself that has its challenges. And then the storage of energy is also an issue. Now in California, I think right now the number is 45% of all electricity come from renewable resources. It depends on where you are, like that flexes, like Palm Springs, for example, is entirely renewable energy because there's so much generated power in the vicinity.
Is there any solar on this building?
Yes. There's a large solar array on the parking garage that covers the entire top deck. Oh, I wouldn't vouch to say how many kilowatt hour generation power there is, but it's very significant. But not enough to cover a hospital, by no means. That's like that you need acres and acres to do that.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. So let's get into a little more detail. I was struggling putting together the questions for this interview because it's like there's just so much going on. So I figured let's just work our way from the outside in. So let's start with the site. I see a lot of different types of outdoor spaces, the turnaround area for the cars, and parking and transportation areas, respite areas, natural environments. Tell me about your site design and what the goals were and some of the things you did there.
You take it off.
Okay. So I mentioned before, you got city on one side, Jamboree Road, very busy. You got marsh on the other side. So when we looked at the site that just spans between the two, we said, how do you take someone from city to nature and get their body there, get their mind there, and just get all the benefits of being so close to that natural preserve. So at the front end, we've got multi-level drop-offs. We've got all the parking so that you can come in, you can conveniently find your place. The entrance to the buildings, we call them the jewel boxes. They're kind of glassy and they stand out. They're well lit. And as you go through the site, so the biggest, I probably should have mentioned in the beginning, the biggest part of our site, the biggest feature is this plaza that connects the two buildings together. And you can see straight from the entry all the way down to the marsh, unobstructed views. In the center, I think it kind of transitions to a more calmer environment on the end. In the center, we have a large area with these bird shade structures, which I'm really excited about. That's going to be really cool. They provide shade for the central area, which I think can hold up to 200 seats at one point.
Easily.
Yeah. And then at the edge, close to the marsh, we have our outdoor spaces. We've got a ramp that goes down to the marsh. Eventually, it'll be connected to the rest of campus through paths and hiking paths and biking paths.
Well, it connects already to the bike paths on the bottom, right? Like, so that's.
And in the future, you're going to more, right?
Yes.
And there's still exercise areas or yoga meditation areas on the edge. And there's even more curved forms, just getting it more tranquil as you get towards that.
Yeah, there's a little piece of surgery waiting that has indoor and outdoor waiting. And the cafe is kind of located on the edge in the bottom of the hospital. The now carbon neutral cafe.
Yes, right. They should name it that. Right?
Yeah, carbon coffee. CC. No, but I think what's remarkable is that we really kind of constricted the vehicular access to the site by consolidating it all in the basic front end of it. And so the rest of the site is therefore all just foot traffic and calm and quiet, and you don't have, cars cutting through, which was in the original bridging documents. Mm-hmm. The original bridging documents that we received had buildings with roads, all connecting them, and we got rid of all of that. And so it's I think really gonna change how people will experience this. It will be more experienced like a resort-like setting rather than it being like this bustling healthcare campus that has activity everywhere. And that's really hard to do. Mm-hmm. To like get the activities, get a calm site. That's difficult.
Yeah.
Well, and so critically important. I remember my two sons are 8 years apart. And when I had my first son, the hospitals had like two women in the maternity ward in one room. You had hardly any privacy. It was just very sterile. But in that 8 years between the two kids, it was all of a sudden these birthing suites. And, you had a couch in there and it was a comfortable place to be with enough room and you had privacy. Mm-hmm. And that just really stood out for me how much the space that you're in can change the experience that you're having. And there's not a whole lot of happy things that happen at a hospital.
So,
I mean, having a baby is one of them, but I mean, even that, it's not easy. And so having those kinds of things that make it a less sterile environment and a more comforting place to be in, or even an enjoyable place to be, is, I think, so critical. And it's taken so long for people to figure that out and really get there. So I just love to see what you guys are doing. Let's get into the buildings in a little more detail. So there's so much. So we're working our way in, outside in. Talk to me about the facade design and some of the cool things you did there.
So I think one of the most important things on this design was already defined somewhat in the DPP and by the requirement that the university put forward. So they wanted rather a lot of daylight in the building, but they also wanted an all-electric hospital. So they didn't want solar heat gain through the facade. So we had to really carefully look at that. And so we did a lot of studies that were basically simulation of what the sun would do to the exterior envelope, and then developed the exterior shading design that kind of optimized views and also shading the facade in combination with a very good glass that had a lot of visible light transmittance, which means that you don't have to have the interior lights on so much because there's a lot of natural light coming into the building. Almost everywhere there's floor-to-ceiling glass in the facility. So the patient room is the first one of its kind, I would say, that we have ever done. There is column-to-column, floor-to-ceiling glass in the patient room. So it really will feel like a hotel room in a pretty fancy place that you're stepping into. And it really gives you also a tremendous connection to the outside world there, which is, this San Joaquin Marsh that you want to look at.
Yeah. We made life harder too for ourselves.
Oh God,
by
it's really difficult.
Orienting the towers, north-south. So we wanted to make sure that everyone had a view, and not just the side facing the marsh. So we oriented north-south so you would have views up and down the marsh, but that's not ideal for
solar exposure.
Right. But we had to weigh all these goals against each other to see what was important. And almost always, the marsh. The marsh is the driver. The marsh is the differentiator.
Yeah.
We just got to make it work anyway.
Yeah. And we did. And so we were able to accomplish both of those things. But it does come with a very significant investment into exterior sun shading and solar protection devices on the outside. And there's varying strategies chosen. There's fritted glass in some portions on the ground floor because we didn't want the solar shades there, because that was really important to have like a really like unobstructed kind of connection to the ground plane.
And the birds.
Yeah, and
had
the
to
birds.
protect the birds.
Yes.
Because the birds couldn't see the glass. So
right. So that's another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we learned a lot about bird strikes, that they actually happen like in the first 20 feet above the ground. That's where most birds hit the glass. So, there was all kinds of things that we did in order to make the outside world a shaded and pleasant and light-filled space. And it was really fun to work on it because we had a really great partner that did the pricing and did the fabrication of it. They were tremendous.
You want to say who that is?
Yeah, Enclose was the curtain wall contractor, and they did an absolutely terrific job. Their team was impeccable in terms of its follow-through, and also the execution and quality now is amazing.
Well, I imagine with the sustainability goals that you had with this building, you really had to put some extra work into that enclosure.
Yes.
Because I'm sorry, you're in California. Floor to ceiling glass in California, and you're doing a sustainable building. I was like, okay, I want to hear about this. How did you do this without having to have AC on, 24/7 and not use even more energy? But it sounds like you really, and having a contractor come on early and really help inform that design is invaluable, especially when you make your life more difficult for yourself and do things like orient north south. But you can get the best of all worlds. It's just not quite as easy. So I really respect that you didn't sacrifice those views and, the aesthetics, but still managed to meet the other goals.
Yeah.
That's always extra work that not everybody always wants to do or is able to do. So it's also a kudos to the client for, obviously, at the end of the day, it's their decision and their money for making that happen. I want to come, can I figure out a procedure that's not going to hurt that I can come have just to come check out the hospital, or I'll just come down and check it out. That sounds better, actually.
Don't hurt yourself.
No, I'm good at that all by myself. What was the most challenging piece of the exterior design? What was the hardest thing to solve of all of it?
I think probably to develop a meaningful shading strategy was probably the most involved from an engineering standpoint of view, because we have a 3-foot sun shading device and then an 18-inch sun shading device on a lot of the facade. And to hold those off and then have the window cleaning system pass it all by is really tricky. And so a lot of consideration went into that. I think the other part that was interesting about it, where those are located and how much of a difference it make if you make something shorter or longer, move it up and down. That was, and still maintaining the view was kind of like a constant battle, right? Like, so we went through several iterations on that. I can't count many, maybe 20, like moving it another inch or two here, pulling it out another 3 inches, and then, oh no, the window cleaning cannot pass by anymore. So it went back and forth with our engineering partners that did really a full-on simulation of the solar heat gain. And so it was tricky. Another part was to get actually stone on the building. I mean, you remember, right? Like that was, we have 2 stair towers that are kind of like significant beacon elements that kind of anchor the 2 buildings in the side and are part of the entry sequence to both. And it's a unitized curtain wall that has now stone on it on the individual curtain wall panels. And that was quite tricky to do that. But it looks really good. Mm-hmm. It's like they did a perfect job.
Just let's find all the hard things and do them all in one building. We've started talking about this a little bit. Clearly, sustainability was at the forefront of this project. Tell me about some of the more notable sustainability features of this project throughout.
Being next to the marsh meant we needed to think about sustainability differently. We did the checklist. The hospital is currently at LEED Platinum and the cancer center is at LEED Gold. So we went through the regular, baseline criteria to meet. And of course, the all electric was a stretch goal. In addition, just being next to that marsh, we definitely didn't want to leave those who were there before us in a worse shape than when we got there. And by that, I mean, the birds we talked about, the turtles, the native species, the plants. So when we had first, and you can talk about the biofiltration a bit more.
Right.
We first thought that not touching it would be the best, just leave it as it was. But actually we worked with UCI biologists from their academic side, and they helped us to understand that they actually wanted that water. And they also made use of the filtration, a retention basin, right?
Yeah, we have like a little retention basin where the stormwater comes out. So the biologists saw the retention basin as a teaching moment for their student population that comes there to do, learn research in the natural environment. And so we designed it so it's kind of as like there's a couple of benches around it. So a group of students can be there with their docent for an extended amount of time and experience what's going on in this little area where the ground is more moist than in other parts of the marsh.
Mm-hmm. And I have to tell the favorite turtle story because these turtles, they're pretty ugly turtles, but anyway, they're also precious and important, but they crawl up. And so they kept crawling up, and if they crawl up into campus, they will get trampled. So this is such a small thing, but we designed a little turtle barrier that's continuous, so they cannot climb up into the campus and get trampled. I think it's 2 feet high. It's not something that blocks any view.
18 inches.
18 inches, yeah. And so just little things like that we had to think about, just being neighbors with this natural preserve. But of course, I mean, all the healthcare points for access to views and nature and healing effects are, just extraordinary in this site.
I'm gonna tell the producers now to do an intro song by Trampled by Turtles, just for this episode. It popped into my head as soon as you said trampled. So there are a lot of different interior spaces in this building. I know how difficult a hospital is to design, mainly because of that variety of types of spaces for the variety of needs that you have in a hospital. So let's start with a broader overview of, you kind of talked about some of them before. Maybe pick a couple of notable and more difficult spaces that you had to design within this building. I've never heard of a hospital with 30 ORs. They probably have them out there and I just don't know there's 30 of them, but
it's 21 ORs.
Oh, 21. Okay.
Yeah. It's a lot of ORs, especially because the hospital isn't that large. UCI's mission is discover, teach, heal. So even when they're building a hospital, they're trying to discover and teach and heal. So in the cancer center, there are 2 research labs that don't normally go in a patient care center. And one of them is designed to a clean room level. It is used for cell therapy, brand new therapy, gets taken out of the patient upstairs in infusion, gets taken to the lab, manipulated, back to the same patient, same day, one roof. It's a truly they used to call it bench to bedside. And this is bed to bench to bedside. I mean, it's like you're doing everything all in one building. It's
translational medicine.
It's translational medicine at the edge, right now, and UCI is doing that. So I think that's quite notable.
Yeah, I would say the other thing that's really remarkable is how the surgical core is designed, right? Like that has. So we have there's a clean corridor in between ORs where the supplies get typically brought in and then distributed into the different ORs. Here, this core has swollen to by like almost double to what it normally is, because all of the case card storage is also in that core, which allows them to quicker turn over the ORs. And so time is money in this particular case, right? Like, because if you can be quicker for the next procedure, the better is your turnover there, or the better is the utilization and all that. Mm-hmm. And it being the most expensive space in a hospital, this really makes a big difference in the bottom line, and also probably in procedural outcomes, because it's less stressful.
And it's just more flexible.
Yeah.
Everything we designed clinically is about being ready for an uncertain future. So that means flexible. There's no other way to predict the future. You just have to plan for flexibility. So like Fabian said, the OR design is very flexible. whether you're a hospital patient or outpatient patient, you go to the same set of ORs. The nurses can use all of those ORs in sets of 2, 3, 5, 10, whatever they need. Other flexible spaces are the patient rooms. So the patient rooms are universal or acuity adaptable, which is something we talked about at Palomar too. That was the first hospital that had ever, I think it was the first hospital in California that had ever tried to do acuity adaptable
rooms.
It had not been adopted by licensing yet. It's actually still not adopted by licensing, but it's a good move for an uncertain future, especially if we have another pandemic. This allows all of the rooms to be used as ICUs if needed. They can all be I don't know if they can all be negative pressure, but they can all have the uptick in air changes that are needed to separate all the patients. Or they can be regular patient rooms, med-surg rooms. And the way that we divided the plan, the way that the HVAC system works, it makes it very flexible.
It's compliant.
Yeah.
From a
license.
You could license it as an ICU.
I think we did. We permit it as an ICU, and they can license. Yes,
they will be able to license it as an ICU if they ever need to.
Adaptability is everything. I'm curious, is back down a rabbit hole. Was there any spaces in this building that were new to you to design, or that are spaces you've designed in other hospitals, but you did something drastically different in this one?
Outdoor waiting.
Go ahead, Shubha.
Yeah, so I think what's really unique about this, because we did the design during the pandemic, and what many providers found that patients didn't want to be in a waiting room, right? Like they wanted to be outside, not next to the next COVID potential
patient,
right?
Patient, COVID positive potential patient, right? Like, so we in this design have waiting rooms on elevated waiting rooms that are outdoor terraces, so you can be outside. The cancer infusion floor has outdoor infusion base, basically not infusion base, but outdoor space where you can be outside, right? Like
you can take your pull out there and be outside.
You could. I mean, like, and whoever wants that. I know Kevin. He talked about that he did that.
Yes,
exactly. And so it's that's pretty much a paradigm shift from a regular kind of standard design of waiting areas in a clinic or hospital setting. That big plaza space in the middle, they also wanted it to be usable for not just, public functionality or events or fundraising or any of that. So we tested all those scenarios, but they wanted it also to be ready if there is another pandemic, that they can convert that and put a few triage tents up or do something. So there's utilities supplied into the plaza for them to allow to do that.
I don't know if you knew that UCI Health was one of the first, I think they were the first hospital in California that erected a field hospital when COVID broke out. So they had all the tents outside. They set it up in a matter of a couple weeks and got the approval of OSHPA and other agencies. So they are very at the forefront of trying to be ready, and I think I know the CEO is very involved in it and adamant about, being ready. So he pushed us a lot on these designs. One space that I've never done and I haven't done since is the lavender rooms. And I've talked about lavender rooms before. It's just when a client cares enough to put that space into the program. It's not a large space. It's not an expensive space, but in healthcare, space is always just taken up with something else. It's too precious. But to actually prioritize the emotional health of a staff member or patient or family or anybody to make that room is very unique and not very common. So of course we, embraced it wholeheartedly. It's got the end room of the patient unit on each floor, so unobstructed views of the marsh. it's a small room. It's designed for when you like really just can't take it anymore emotionally. You have to get away. You got to go somewhere quiet with the view, with a comfy chair and something that just distracts you from, the horrible thing that might have happened. So I hope that we can do another one again. They're important spaces, but not always very common.
Well, I mean, I had heard about that from you before, which I think is outstanding, because usually in a hospital, the only space like that you have to go to, and only in some hospitals, is a chapel. I have a hospital right down the street that it's a Catholic hospital, and they have a chapel in the hospital. And I've been there for family members a couple times. And if you wanted this place for peace, it's the only place you had. But that's not necessarily, that kind of space isn't necessarily going to work for everybody.
Right.
But
and if you're a staff member, you can't go to a chapel where there's patients. I recently talked to some nurses, and they said they went to the bathroom to cry, because there's no other space to do that privately. So
what an awful place to have to go. You got to go to the bathroom so I could cry. That's horrible.
No, and you staircase. Yeah. There's other places where you can be alone, but they are not
designed.
They're not designed for that. They're, it's just happenstance. Storage closet.
I've probably done that a time or two in my life. I have to say, though, that you really kind of just rocked my world talking about what they did out in that plaza to be ready, and actually even have like services out there if they had to put up medical tents.
Yeah.
It's not just a space to put up tents, but they can actually go out there and hook up equipment if they have to. That's the first time I've ever heard that. I mean, I know that COVID has affected what a lot of people do in building design, but I have never heard of anybody doing something like that. That's serious forethought. What if this happens again or something like it? What can we do right now to make sure that we can maybe better handle it?
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's really incredible. You just totally blew my mind with that one. My brain's like sitting on that for some reason. Let's talk about material selections a little bit. I happen to know, just from the little bit I've worked on medical projects in the past, that you can't just go pick your standard building materials. A lot of times, in a medical facility, there's all kinds of things you have to be concerned about. Germs being a big one. Talk to me a little bit about the material selections you made in this building, and maybe teach our listeners something a little bit about choosing materials in this kind of facility as opposed to an office building or something like that. What you have to be thinking about when you're doing that.
Okay.
Well, as a baseline, we have our standard products we use that must be able to handle the healthcare environment. So they've got to be very cleanable. They got to be durable, last, 50 years if possible. Antimicrobial as possible, non-VOC emitting as possible. I mean, all these things affect health. So, and then we need to kind of tailor this to the client and the design concept and what we're trying to do. We also look for things that can stand up to healthcare standards, but maybe don't evoke healthcare feelings, like these corner guards or wall protection that always lets you know that you're in a hospital. On UCI, we use a lot of this wall covering type of wall protection. It's called P3 Tech. It curves. It looks more like textured wallpaper, but it does the job.
Yeah, I think the big thing, and this is not just true for the typology of a hospital, it's also true for most of the work we do, because it's for mission-driven clients that hang on to their facility as long as I possibly can, right? So we want to make it as durable as possible. So, so to have kind of things that are withstand the test of time, not just from a looks perspective, but also from a material durability perspective is really kind of important to combine those two things. So to like use natural material, pleasant to touch and also to experience in a space is really a priority. And we try to introduce that as much as possible in those environments because it is a very plastic-driven kind of place when you look around in a hospital. So to like get away from that at least a little bit, to me, makes a huge difference. And we try to introduce it then in the public spaces and where it's a little bit more forgiving and not the harshest chemicals are used always to clean things.
I have an example that I think Fabian's not going to really like, but I'm going to say it anyway. We had to try to bring warmth to these public areas.
Yeah.
And we wanted to use wood, but we needed to use wood that could go outside to inside.
Yeah.
It needed to be durable. It needed to be water resistant.
Yeah.
We used in these areas a metal panel that has a wood finish.
Yeah.
And, I say that he's not going to like it because I know that he likes to stay very true to, the material and what it is. And it shouldn't be looking like something else.
Something that it's not.
But, I think in these cases, we need to make the decisions that accomplish the goals and are durable. Like durability is such an important thing. Otherwise, it's not going to look good after.
Yeah. And for it's different. There's very little money to clean and replace things in these environments. They want to put the money where it matters most to them, which is providing good healthcare and not doing building maintenance. It's not a casino or a hotel, and so it's very important that we kind of strike the balance here.
I've seen those faux wood metal panels, and they've come a long way.
Mm-hmm.
They have come a really long way. But I did schools for the first 20 plus years of my career, and the mindset is very similar to a hospital. The main goal is teaching, and everything has to stand up to the abuse that children inflict on a school. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but kids are, rambunctious and they're learning and trying to figure out how to be a human being. And they're really hard on materials. And it was always so difficult to find materials that would stand the test of time, but looked good as well. And I think we've come a long way in that arena as well. But I think in these kinds of facilities, that's the biggest challenge, is getting that warmth and getting that vibe of it being a nurturing place, and still having it hold up, because they're not flipping that building. They're going to be in it for the long haul.
Yes.
One of my favorite, and we've talked about this a little bit, but you might have more to tell me, so I'm going to ask it anyway. One of my favorite things to say is it's all about the people. I've been saying that for years. At the end of the day, nothing else works unless the people work. And the thing that really stood out for me when we talked about Palomar, and again talking today, is how much your firm hyper focuses on taking care of that mental health and that peaceful place for not just the patients, but also the staff. When we talked about Palomar, that's what really was my mind blower in that interview, is, wow, somebody's thinking about the staff. That's really beyond just, here's a place to put your stuff in a locker. And like I said, that got me a little choked up. That's how important I thought it was. And, especially in the tales of COVID and watching what all our medical professionals went through. I know you did that here as well, and you've told me about a couple places. How many peaceful, healing, respite type of spaces do you have throughout this facility?
Let's see. Well, let's think about it with the patients, families, and staff, right? Yeah. So patient families, we've got the meditation garden. The
meditation.
Mm-hmm.
That's two things. So then we have the yoga area that probably should be used would be used by staff and by patients jointly. Then we have a lab in the room on every floor, right? Like, so that's 5 or 6. It's 6 of those.
I think what we heard by the staff here was that some level of separation from patients and families is soothing to them, because they really can't be themselves for a variety of reasons, like there's privacy, there's just, you're there as a support person. You're not there to share in the pain, but you do feel the pain. So one of the things, the third level of the hospital is actually
staff only.
Yeah, staff only. It has a lab, has a pharmacy, and a couple other staff only areas, and it has a terrace there. It has a big lounge. So I think just having that no patient zone, you can kind of talk about anything you want on that floor. You don't have to make sure no one's around.
Yeah.
You can be with each other. There's a resident program there, so the younger residents who are learning to be doctors might be taking things harder than, more seasoned doctors can go there. And
there's also a well-defined collaboration area on every floor, right? Like that is kind of
the biggest we've ever done.
Screened somewhat from visitors. I mean, patients don't really go there.
No.
And so that's also kind of unique to this facility, because it's a teaching hospital as well.
That's right.
And so students and the medical staff can get together there to kind of talk among things, and they also have a quiet place to work.
And then adding to that, all your outdoor spaces. I specifically wanted to ask that question because I wanted you to sit there and list all those things on purpose, because while you are starting to see more of those types of spaces in hospitals, most hospitals don't go to that level. And they are critically important. And, that staff, even just having a place to disconnect completely, that's some emotional, that's work that takes a large emotional toll. And maybe you want to just go somewhere and not think about it for a minute, without anybody looking out at you, without, some family member saying, hey, can I ask you a question? And I don't think we've ever had enough of that. And I think that's a game changer. So I wanted to make you say them all in one answer. Because I just think it's really cool. We always like to talk about at least one lesson learned during construction. My favorite little thing to say lately is that's where the rubber meets the road. You do this great design and you get into construction. It's still a great design, but maybe something doesn't come together quite the way you expected, or maybe you have to pivot.
I don't think that exists at this point.
Here we go. See, these Germans are sassy. I don't call them problems, because I don't think I've never once in my career seen a construction period that didn't have some kind of challenge you had to work out through the course of the project. And your lessons learned help the rest of our listeners do their job better. So one that you're willing to talk about, at least. What was your biggest lesson learned, each of you, during construction that you might do a little differently next time?
I guess I'll start while you think about your favorite one. This is not anything that is going to change the next project, but healthcare just never stops changing in construction. You have this new piece of equipment or this new technology. It's unavoidable that you're going to change stuff. And as UCI Health, a very, I know they don't like to say cutting edge, but a very, top-notch, forward-thinking academic medical center, they want the best this and that and the newest technology, and even the little camera and all those things come with changes that we have had to make during construction, which costs more, which takes longer, which is painful. But again, the lesson I've learned is that, they need to be the best. So we just need to deal with it.
Yeah. I would say what was really striking to me is that, there is a very good foundational document that we based our design around and evolved it together with the contractor. That it was a design build project, very fast paced. And then we found out that, as we start construction, that there is actually changes that the client kind of like, they held back a little bit. And then said, okay, then now we want this, and we want this, and we want this, right? Like, so it kept piling on. And that is very challenging then to incorporate all that or revisit things and redo stuff. That was really hard on the team. I think many people worked very late hours to kind of accommodate those design changes. I think I don't recommend putting an MRI on a second floor, because that would be something, if you can avoid it, don't do it, because it's really involved. It requires you to kind of isolate it from the rest of the structure. So the floor can't touch the floor directly. So there has to be on dampers and a second slab. And then all of the walls also and the ceiling have to be separated from the rest of the structure, because the vibration that exists in a building can't transfer to that imaging equipment. And that was, difficult to do, and it's not worth it, really.
Well,
we didn't have room for it any other place.
But, I think it wanted to be on that floor.
Yeah, and because that was the rest of the imaging department.
Yeah, we had to make those trade-offs. Again, we have to make the tough decision.
Right.
And do it. So I actually think it is the right place for it. But yes,
it is the right place. It's the right place from a departmental standpoint view, but from a efficiency of construction standpoint of view, it's not necessarily the right place.
If you can avoid it,
yes.
Right?
Yeah. Don't put it on slab on grade.
Don't make a very, very complicated linear accelerator into a doubly as complicated MRI linear accelerator while in construction. That was
also
hard, really hard. Yeah. But again, we had a young team member who was just tenacious, work on it, and made it work.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
6 foot thick.
I think they're 4 foot.
I mean,
thick.
like
concrete,
enormously thick concrete walls, right? Like so, and they use the Lego blocks things to build that.
The concrete. What's it? Yeah, like the. What's it called? Compressed concrete block or something.
Yeah.
The super heavy ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the right place for it in this particular facility, because of the way you had to lay everything out, but the next project you would probably try to get it on the ground floor.
Yes.
Yeah.
If possible, yes.
If possible. It's like Gina Chang, it's in the right place, but it's challenging to make happen. Right? Like, so that's kind of
one. Now you know how.
Right,
you put it down, right?
So easy.
You're pros. So before we get to our couple of little extra questions, what's next for co-architects? What interview am I looking forward to down the road? What are you working on?
Oh, what are we working on?
What are we working on? We're working on many hospitals.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm working on another big one like this one, maybe even a little bigger for...
Can you say it? No.
Yeah, I think we can say, yeah. So we're working on another one, another big one like this for Harbor UCLA, which is one of the original county hospitals in Los Angeles. It's the hospital for the Olympics 2028 and the hospital for the president if he's ever in town and unfortunate to have any kind of accident. So it's both community based, serves a lot of the underserved population and uninsured populations, but it also served Tiger Woods when he got had to come to the hospital and the president, and so it's gonna be a hospital for the people.
Yeah,
very exciting. Well, I know where to find you guys. So I like to close out each episode with one broad industry question and then my final question that everybody gets. And so for you guys, my industry question is, okay, so you are both principals of a notable firm that's doing some really incredible things. What areas do you, as principals, do you feel are most important for a firm to be focusing on for growth in the current climate that we are all living and working in today?
Everyone says the workforce is changing, and it's easy to say generationally this group is different than generationally that group. But I feel like what makes us passionate about work doesn't really change. You want to do something that no one's ever done before, or you want to satisfy your curiosity about something, or work as a team, connect with people and achieve something amazing. So, I don't know. I think we just need to focus on the people that we have, a very talented group of people, make sure that they are able to each grow and develop. I run both the mentor program here and also something called Co-University, which is both of those things are about sort of individual growth and development and finding your own passion and voice. And because I think those things don't really change. And as long as we focus on our people and making them work well in teams, it's kind of the thing we've always done that's worked so far.
You and I have that in common. I do a lot of mentoring with young professionals, and I talk about the generational shift a lot. And I agree with you. People want to talk about, Gen Z is lazy or whatever stupid things they want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And the only big difference I see right now, besides just being more empathetic human beings in general, is we are asking our younger professionals to step up a lot sooner in roles of responsibility than we would have been allowed to. And part of that is because of this lack of Gen X and the boomers being so huge. There's none of us to fill their shoes. So who's filling them? The ones behind us 15 years sooner than they would have been allowed to 20 years ago. And so that mentoring and having that team environment and focus on their growth as professionals is really important for that reason, because they're taking on a lot more a lot earlier. But I agree with you. The passion is the passion. You either love your work or you don't. What about you, Fabian?
Yeah, I come from I will look at it from a completely different angle. I agree with all that, what Gina is saying and you are saying. I think mentoring and all that, and I'm part of that Co-University. I teach with my other design principal here, the class on design. And so it's always like, it's wonderful to see the people thrive in these environments, and the surprise that you get from when somebody that you never thought would have a brilliant idea all of a sudden put something forward that's a total surprise. And it's really great to see that. I think for me is to prepare our practice and ourselves as an industry for the challenges that come from climate change. I think are paramount for us to survive in the business and to actually thrive in the business. If we can't respond with the stuff that we're doing to the challenges that we're going to have ahead of us, let alone just the building code getting more stringent, but also things that kind of like will be surprising expectations all of a sudden that clients will have towards us. And not everyone is as supportive as UCI was, right? Was like, and being so aligned in terms of the goals. So it's like how you can fight that fight in a way that is convincing to others and that is also enriching to the practice. That is kind of like a big question I have, and some strategies maybe I can think of, but who knows if it's going to be successful.
You don't know unless you try, right?
Right, exactly.
Final question. Everybody gets this one. They've been getting this one since day one. I keep morphing it. We all hope that our involvement in this life will in some way make the world a better place or make an impact. And that doesn't mean necessarily the whole world. It might mean just your world or the people that you touch or affect. For me, I call that mission my personal world domination statement, the ways that I want to make a difference in the areas where I can. So my question to you, personal or professional, is what is your world domination statement? How do you want to leave your mark or your impact on the world around you? Light, easy ending question.
Well,
That's so easy.
I can ask first because I keep punting. So for me, it's like one has to be willing to volunteer their service if you can. And so that gives me great satisfaction. If I do something where it's really purely me kind of like putting myself out there and putting myself forward, or also the practice, and sometimes with the support of the practice that happens here. I think that is an enriching experience that you can only get from that. And that feeling comes only from that. And I think doing more, I wish I could do more of it because it gives me joy and it also fills my soul with energy. And so if I can do that more, that would be wonderful. I think our practice already volunteers also a lot of hours, sometimes unwillingly.
What you're talking about, right?
But that's not what I'm talking about. Okay,
Right.
like it's really truly kind of like having a project that is, of that nature.
I knew I liked him for a reason. Totally agree with you. How about you, Gina?
Yeah, I love that too. I also, feel like world domination is like it comes from within. It's this little world. To think about the whole world is hard, but in this little world, I love what I do. I love finding ideas that come from other people and bringing people together to talk about and solve something that seems so hard. But I've come to see that it's about like being a whole person too. I have 2 kids and I've been trying to take them every weekend to something natural, because I feel like kids hate natural stuff. They only want to work, play on their phones and stuff. But I also think that obviously we all learn to love it, and we learn stuff from being in nature that you don't know how to do by Googling. You like where to step so you don't fall, or what to eat and what not to eat, or that kind of stuff. That's a whole other world of knowledge that helps you be a better thinker and a better friend and a better family member. So I've been trying to spend more time on becoming a whole person and encouraging other people to be a whole person.
Well, that question is all about this little world. Because none of us are going to take over the whole planet, but every little thing we do might seem inconsequential to us, has ripple effects we'll never know.
Yeah.
And so just being thoughtful about what am I doing with my own little world, and taking a minute to think about that sometimes changes behavior, or doing things like I threw my kids out in nature all the time. But it does make a difference. It does open our eyes and make us more of a community and less in these silos that technology has helped us build for ourselves. I just knew you guys were going to be amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today. I will be coming back. I'm going to be your favorite pest for years to come. It's an amazing project. You have an amazing firm, and I'm really excited and thankful you took the time to tell me about this project and to talk with you again today.
Thank you so much, Cherise.
Yeah,
it was wonderful to talk to you too.
It's always fun and thought-provoking. You have really great questions and rabbit holes.
Thank you again.
Thank you.